River Monsters wasn't just a show, it was a test of human will against nature's darkest mysteries. For 9 seasons, Jeremy Wade wrestled with the impossible. Creatures whispered about in villages, shadows that turned into legends, and dangers no crew had ever dared to face. Yet at the height of its fame, everything suddenly came to an end, leaving fans stunned and rumors swirling. What really happened behind the cameras? The answer, as Wade himself admits, was far stranger and far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. The rise of river monsters. When River Monsters first hit television screens in 2009, few could have predicted how much of a global impact it would make. What began as a series on Animal Planet quickly grew into one of the channel's most successful programs of all time. Viewers were not only fascinated by the idea of a man venturing into some of the most remote and dangerous waters on Earth, but they were captivated by the man himself, Jeremy Wade, a British biologist and extreme angler whose life would be transformed in ways he never expected. The show entertained millions, sparked curiosity about the natural world, and helped preserve endangered species. But behind its popularity was a journey that would eventually lead to a shocking and difficult end. River Monsters was created by the UK-based production company Icon Films, but Wade's expertise and fearless approach gave it its identity. As a biologist and lifelong angler, Wade had already spent decades chasing elusive fish species long before cameras began to follow him. His passion for combining science, adventure, and folklore gave the program a distinctive edge. Instead of being just another fishing show, River Monsters became a mixture of scientific investigation, travel documentary, and mystery series, with each episode structured like a detective story. Wade set out to uncover the truth behind terrifying local legends of man-eating fish, lake monsters, and mysterious river creatures, then tested those legends against real biological evidence. The concept immediately stood out. Instead of focusing on the ocean, where most wildlife documentaries had traditionally turned their attention, Wade explored freshwater ecosystems. Lakes, rivers, and swamps across the globe became his stage, and each new environment introduced audiences to myths and species that had rarely been featured in mainstream television before. In many ways, the series opened an entirely new frontier for wildlife programming. It asked questions audiences didn't know they wanted answered. Could a fish really drag a human underwater? Were the legends of giant predators based on truth, or were they campfire tales exaggerated over generations? Wade didn't provide instant answers. He led viewers through the search, building suspense until the final reveal of each creature. Over the course of its 9 seasons, River Monsters became a true global phenomenon. Jeremy Wade and his crew traveled to more than 30 countries, venturing into regions that were often extremely difficult to access. They filmed in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil, the vast rivers of Congo, the sacred waters of India, the dense jungles of Papua New Guinea, and even rivers in the United States and Russia. Each location brought unique challenges, from harsh climates and dangerous animals to complex cultural landscapes. Wade relied heavily on local communities for knowledge, listening to stories passed down for generations before setting out to test them against his scientific training. The scale of the show was extraordinary. It aired in over 100 territories worldwide and was translated into multiple languages, allowing it to reach audiences far beyond English-speaking countries. The success was reflected not only in viewership ratings, but also in the way clips spread online. On YouTube, highlights from the series attracted millions of views, keeping episodes alive long after their original air date and introducing new generations to Wade's work. Part of the show's enduring appeal came from its balance of entertainment and education. While the suspense of each investigation pulled audiences in, the scientific revelations held them there. Wade used his platform to raise awareness about endangered species and the fragile ecosystems they lived in. By tracing the roots of myths and legends back to real animals, he showed viewers the importance of conservation. Creatures that had once been dismissed as villains, such as the Goonch catfish in India, the arapaima in Brazil, or the Goliath tigerfish in Africa, were presented not as monsters to be feared, but as vital parts of their environments that deserved protection. This mixture of zoology, folklore, and conservation created something entirely new on television. Viewers felt like they were joining Wade on an expedition, traveling into regions that most people would never visit, and coming face to face with rare animals that few had ever seen. After 9 seasons, over 72 episodes, and multiple specials, the program had built an international reputation. Yet while the show elevated Jeremy Wade to global recognition, it also demanded an enormous personal cost. Behind the success, he was dealing with physical risks, relentless travel, and pressures that few outside the production could fully grasp. And when the end came, it was not for reasons anyone expected. The battles Jeremy endured. For all its success, River Monsters demanded an extraordinary level of sacrifice from Jeremy Wade. What audiences saw on screen was the thrill of discovery and the suspense of finding rare creatures. But behind those gripping sequences lay years of physical hardship, brushes with danger, and personal struggles that few television hosts could endure. The challenges were not staged or dramatized. They were very real, and many of them left lasting marks on Wade's health and outlook. One of the greatest risks Wade faced throughout his career was disease. Filming in remote jungles, swamps, and riverbanks meant exposing himself to environments where tropical illnesses were a constant threat. Over the years, he contracted both malaria and dengue fever, diseases that can be life-threatening if not treated quickly. These were not one-time encounters. The constant return to dangerous climates meant his body was repeatedly tested. Malaria alone can cause recurring fevers, chills, and long periods of weakness. But Wade continued his expeditions, often pushing through symptoms in order to complete filming schedules. In addition to illnesses, Wade endured painful physical injuries that came directly from the creatures he was trying to document. One of the most serious incidents occurred when he was struck in the chest by an arapaima, a massive freshwater fish native to South America. Known to grow over 8 feet long and weigh several hundred pounds, the arapaima is capable of delivering powerful blows. Wade's encounter left him with a severe chest injury that took over 6 weeks to heal. For most people, that kind of accident might have ended a career, but Wade returned to the water once he recovered, determined to finish the work he had started. His risks were not limited to animals and diseases. While fishing in the Mekong River in Southeast Asia, Wade was suddenly arrested by local authorities. Mistaken for a spy, he was taken into custody, an ordeal that could have ended very differently if not for careful explanations and negotiations. Experiences like that revealed the dangers of operating in politically sensitive regions, where outsiders moving around remote waterways could easily be seen as suspicious. Traveling through unstable regions also exposed Wade to human conflicts. While filming in parts of Africa, his crew occasionally encountered areas disrupted by rebel activity. On some occasions, planned expeditions had to be rerouted at the last moment because the presence of armed groups made filming too risky. The constant threat of violence was a reminder that the show's production was never limited to biological dangers, as geopolitical realities shaped every journey. Wade often emphasized how much his team relied on local knowledge and cooperation to navigate these landscapes safely. Even when the threat was not from people or illness, nature itself was an ever-present danger. Scouting river locations often required Wade to enter the water himself, sometimes in places inhabited by Nile crocodiles. These predators are among the most dangerous animals in Africa, capable of taking down large mammals in a matter of seconds. Swimming in their territory required absolute concentration and nerves of steel, yet Wade repeatedly took on that risk to bring viewers the footage that made river monsters so compelling. Beyond the physical dangers, the emotional toll of this lifestyle was immense. Long stretches of filming kept Wade away from family and friends, leading to periods of isolation that weighed heavily on him. The exhaustion of constant travel, unpredictable living conditions, and the stress of keeping both himself and his crew safe wore him down over time. Added to that were ethical dilemmas that came with his mission. As someone committed to conservation, Wade had to balance the demands of television storytelling with the responsibility of treating both animals and local traditions with respect, capturing footage that was engaging while ensuring the well-being of the species often left him wrestling with difficult decisions. These hardships rarely made it into the final episodes, but they defined the reality of Wade's life behind the camera. And while Wade pushed himself beyond his limits for nearly a decade, the pressures were not his alone. The production of River Monsters carried its own challenges that shaped the show's fate as much as Wade's personal battles. The show's challenges. While River Monsters looked seamless on screen, every episode represented a massive undertaking filled with obstacles that viewers never saw. Behind Jeremy Wade's calm narration and the dramatic captures of elusive species was a production that constantly battled bureaucracy, unpredictable weather, and even life-threatening accidents. What appeared as a one-hour adventure often took weeks of painstaking effort, testing not only Wade but the entire crew. One of the most difficult hurdles came from navigating logistics and bureaucracy. Filming across multiple countries meant dealing with governments, border agencies, and layers of red tape that could stall progress for weeks at a time. In some regions, officials were cautious about granting access to foreign crews, especially those bringing in large amounts of filming equipment. For example, an expedition to the Congo faced major delays because of government regulations and paperwork. Even after the team arrived with plans in place, permits were frequently re-evaluated, forcing the crew into long periods of waiting before they could film a single frame. This was not an isolated issue. Securing the right to fish in protected waters or to film in culturally sensitive areas required endless negotiation. Some countries flatly denied permission, leaving Wade and his team unable to pursue certain legends they had planned to investigate. The unpredictability of official approvals meant that months of preparation could collapse in an instant, with entire storylines scrapped because access was not granted. Beyond paperwork, the crew themselves faced dangers that often rivaled the risks Wade took in the water. One of the most startling incidents occurred in Suriname when the team's sound recordist was struck by lightning. The crew had been filming during a storm when a sudden bolt hit the area, leaving the recordist injured but alive. There were other injuries as well. While filming an episode involving a giant grouper, a cameraman was badly hurt during the capture of the enormous fish. The size and strength of such species made them unpredictable, and filming up close put the crew in direct danger. Every shot that brought audiences face to face with these creatures required someone behind the camera to share the same risks as Wade. On another occasion, the crew stumbled into a real-life rescue operation while working in Australia. They encountered a man stranded on an island, a castaway who had been cut off from help. The production team stepped in to assist, turning what had been an expedition for the show into a genuine survival mission. These kinds of unexpected events showed the unpredictable nature of working in remote environments, where filming wildlife could quickly give way to confronting human emergencies. Even when official permissions were granted and accidents avoided, the extreme conditions of filming created enormous challenges. Each episode of River Monsters took roughly 3 weeks to complete, with more than 10 days often dedicated exclusively to fishing. This was not a staged process where animals were guaranteed to appear on cue. Wade had to put in endless hours with little certainty of success, casting line after line into waters where the target species might never bite. Some of the numbers behind his efforts are staggering. While filming in Canada in pursuit of a muskie, a large predatory fish known for its elusive behavior, Wade reportedly made over 15,000 casts before landing one. This was the kind of relentless dedication required for the show. Viewers saw the dramatic moment of capture, but the reality behind it was weeks of waiting, effort, and frustration under punishing conditions. Other shoots required equally inventive approaches. In New Zealand, the crew was investigating stories of massive eels. To attract them, Wade used fish guts as bait, a strategy that meant hours spent handling rotting material in cold, murky waters. These extreme measures reflected the lengths to which the production went in order to deliver authentic results. Unlike many wildlife shows that could rely on controlled environments or prearranged encounters, River Monsters insisted on capturing events in the wild, no matter how difficult the process. The unpredictability of filming meant that entire trips could fail to yield results, forcing the team to stay longer or return at a later date. Each delay meant higher costs, more stress, and heavier pressure to deliver episodes that lived up to the show's reputation. For Wade, this pressure was compounded by the knowledge that his crew's safety and well-being often depended on decisions he made in the field. It was easy for the audience to get swept up in the myth-busting excitement of the final reveal. But for the production team, each capture represented the culmination of extraordinary effort behind the scenes. Yet despite overcoming these enormous challenges time and time again, the series would eventually come to an end. And while many assumed the cancellation was due to dwindling ratings or fading interest, the real reasons were far more complicated and far more controversial. The controversial cancellation. By the time River Monsters had reached its peak, it was one of Animal Planet's crown jewels, drawing audiences from over 100 countries and inspiring countless viewers to see rivers and lakes in a new light. Yet as the show grew in popularity, so too did the scrutiny. With Jeremy Wade seemingly pulling off one impossible expedition after another, questions began to surface about whether what viewers were seeing was entirely authentic. Online forums, blogs, and Reddit threads became hubs of speculation. Some viewers found it difficult to believe that Wade could consistently track down the exact legendary creature he was investigating. The idea that a single man armed with a fishing rod could locate some of the rarest and most elusive fish on Earth seemed improbable to skeptics. Whispers began to spread. Was the show planting fish? Were catches staged? Was the folklore being exaggerated to heighten drama for television? The accusations were not small because they struck at the very core of what made River Monsters compelling. If the catches were staged, then the suspense, the detective-style investigations, and the long, grueling battles with massive fish would lose their authenticity. It would transform the program from a groundbreaking natural history series into something resembling scripted entertainment. For a host like Jeremy Wade, whose reputation rested on credibility and respect for science, these doubts carried weight. Wade, however, consistently denied any suggestion of fabrication. In multiple interviews, he addressed the rumors directly, emphasizing that every lead the show pursued came from genuine local accounts. The legends that guided each expedition were real stories gathered from communities that had lived alongside these rivers for generations. The captures themselves, he insisted, were authentic, and no fish were planted or encounters staged. Behind the scenes, the truth was far more grueling than critics imagined. Wade explained that what viewers saw condensed into an hour of television was the result of weeks of relentless effort. What appeared to be a miraculous catch on screen was usually the product of exhaustion, repetition, and unwavering determination. Wade also pointed out the ethical decisions the production team made to protect both people and animals. He revealed that the crew deliberately avoided sensationalism. Injuries and dangerous incidents were never filmed for shock value. If someone on the crew was hurt or sick, medical care took precedence over capturing dramatic footage. This philosophy separated river monsters from more sensational reality programs, which often leaned on manufactured drama. Wade's goal was always education and conservation, not spectacle. Still, speculation about authenticity was only one layer of controversy. In April 2017, Animal Planet confirmed that River Monsters would officially end after 9 seasons. The announcement caught many fans off guard. The show was still popular, still drawing solid ratings, and still generating massive engagement online through YouTube clips and global syndication. There was no obvious reason for it to be cancelled at the height of its influence. Almost immediately, theories filled the vacuum of information. Some fans feared that Wade had suffered a serious accident or health issue during filming, something too severe to continue production. Others speculated that the network had pulled the plug because of politics behind the scenes, perhaps disagreements between the production company and Animal Planet executives. A more sensational theory even suggested that Wade had been silenced, either because of hidden dangers he had uncovered in remote regions, or because the show's message about environmental decline had touched on sensitive issues. In the months that followed, Wade continued to defend the integrity of his work and reassure fans that there was no dark conspiracy behind the decision. Yet, the cancellation marked a turning point. For years, audiences had tuned in to see him uncover the truth behind River Legends. But now, the biggest unanswered question surrounded the show itself. Why would a successful, groundbreaking program suddenly end when it still had so much momentum? It turns out that the truth lay in something much more personal and tied directly to Wade himself and the toll the show had taken on his life. The real reason the show ended. The truth behind the end of River Monsters, as Wade himself explained, was far more straightforward and, in many ways, more satisfying. By the end of the 9th season, he had accomplished what he set out to do. The monster bucket list that had driven the series from the very beginning was finally complete. When Wade first began the show, he carried with him a mental list of legendary creatures that had fascinated him for decades. These were animals that sat at the blurry edge between myth and science, species whispered about in riverside villages, feared in local folklore, but rarely documented in detail for the wider world. For Wade, the goal of the show was never endless spectacle. It was about shining light on these mysteries, separating truth from rumor, and, in the process, giving respect to species that had been misunderstood. But by season 9, he had found them all. In India, he tracked the goonch catfish, a massive river predator linked to terrifying tales of villagers dragged underwater. In the Amazon, he battled the arapaima, an enormous armor-plated fish capable of leaping with enough force to break bones, a danger Wade himself experienced firsthand. In the Congo, he came face-to-face with the Goliath tigerfish, a true apex predator with razor-sharp fangs that seemed closer to a nightmare than reality. In Argentina, he encountered the giant freshwater stingray, a creature so massive and venomous it pushed the limits of what many believed possible in a river environment. He even sought out the infamous candiru in the Amazon, a tiny parasitic fish rumored to invade the human body in horrifying ways. For decades, it had been treated as little more than a gruesome legend, but Wade investigated it with the same seriousness he gave to larger predators. Each of these species, once only the subject of rumors and local fear, had been captured on camera, documented, and explained through the framework of biology and conservation. Wade often explained that the subject matter for River Monsters was inherently finite. There were only so many credible monsters that could be pursued without drifting into fantasy. To maintain the integrity of the series, he refused to exaggerate or chase creatures that lacked any scientific basis. He declined to create episodes around folklore that had no grounding in evidence, even if such stories might have been tempting for television. This ethical boundary set River Monsters apart from other programs that blurred the line between reality and dramatization. Wade's commitment to truth meant that once the list of viable monsters was exhausted, the series had naturally reached its conclusion. Continuing beyond that point would have required fabricating legends, staging encounters, or sensationalizing myths, things Wade was unwilling to do. At the same time, Wade could not ignore the personal toll the series had taken. Years of extreme travel, grueling expeditions, and constant exposure to health risks had left their mark. Over the course of his career, he endured diseases and serious injuries, including a torn bicep and a dangerous chest injury. Each trip meant long periods of physical strain, little rest, and constant danger. As he grew older, he acknowledged that the risks were becoming harder to justify, especially when the remaining unexplored legends were either too obscure to capture audience interest or too dangerous to pursue without crossing ethical lines. Logistically, the production also grew more difficult. With many of the major monsters already covered, new expeditions required venturing deeper into remote areas, pushing both budget and safety limits. Some episodes demanded weeks of fishing without any guarantee of success, straining both the crew and the resources available. The practical challenges of filming, combined with the shrinking list of viable subjects, made it clear that the series had reached its natural endpoint. By 2017, Wade and the production team recognized that the time had come to close the book. River Monsters ended not because it failed, but because it had succeeded in fulfilling its mission. Every creature on Wade's bucket list had been revealed, studied, and shared with the world. Instead of letting the series drift into repetition or compromise, it ended with integrity intact. For fans, the announcement was bittersweet. The idea that there were no more monsters left to chase felt hard to accept, but Wade himself explained that the decision was a matter of respect for the animals, for the audience, and for the truth. Still, the end of the show did not mean the end of Wade's adventures. He continued to write, present, and explore, always driven by the same curiosity that made him a household name. And with so many fans still eager to see him on screen, the question remained: could there ever be a comeback for River Monsters? A possible comeback. When River Monsters ended in 2017, many viewers held out hope that Jeremy Wade might one day revive the series. The appetite for more was undeniable. Clips from the show continued to rack up millions of views online, and fans across the world flooded forums and social media with calls for a reboot. Yet Wade made it clear that while the series had run its course, his mission had not. Instead of returning to the same formula, he shifted his focus to new projects that explored the natural world in different ways. His first follow-up was Jeremy Wade's Mighty Rivers, which aired in 2018. Rather than searching for mysterious predators, Wade turned his attention to some of the most important rivers on Earth, such as the Ganges, the Mississippi, and the Yangtze. The series highlighted the threats these waterways faced from pollution, overfishing, and climate change. It was a natural evolution of Wade's lifelong passion of using storytelling to reveal how freshwater environments shape both wildlife and human societies. This time around, it was less about monster hunting and more about understanding the urgent ecological challenges that defined the future of rivers. Not long after, Wade launched Dark Waters. This series maintained the investigative spirit of River Monsters, but took it in a new direction, examining unusual and lesser-known mysteries in lakes and rivers across the globe. While still adventurous, the emphasis leaned more toward environmental science and uncovering the hidden complexities of freshwater ecosystems. It showed that Wade could reinvent his format without repeating the same formula that made him famous. In 2020, Wade also appeared in Mysteries of the Deep, a program that expanded beyond rivers to explore oceanic mysteries and shipwreck legends. Once again, he brought his unique blend of scientific curiosity and calm narration, proving that his appeal extended well beyond a single television concept. These shows collectively demonstrated that Wade was still committed to storytelling, yet he refused to simply recycle river monsters into a less authentic version of itself. Wade has made it clear that he has never agreed to a reboot of River Monsters. Reports confirmed that he turned down opportunities to extend the franchise when they involved altering the show into a more conventional reality format. He refused to dramatize stories, exaggerate encounters, or chase ratings at the expense of truth. For Wade, the integrity of the original series was inseparable from its legacy, and turning it into something else would have undermined everything it stood for. This integrity was ultimately part of why the series ended. Wade knew that River Monsters could not evolve into something he didn't believe in. By closing the chapter at the right time, he preserved its reputation as one of the most unique and authentic wildlife shows ever produced. Would you love to see a reboot of River Monsters? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.